Are you like most sales and other professionals who want to grow their wealth faster than what they are currently doing through their company 401k, even with that company match, the stock market, or just plain saving money? Would you sleep better at night if you had the financial freedom to be job optional in just 3 to 5 years through investing in real assets? Maybe you don't want to stop working, but wouldn't it be cool if you could retire a decade earlier than most? And do the traveling you and your family have planned for years while you're still young and can enjoy it? Let's face it, most busy professionals don't have the time or desire to take on more work outside of their W-2 to grow their wealth. On The Wealth Flow, each week we share the stories, the investments, and take a deep dive into the various asset classes that can deliver that accelerated growth to your portfolio passively. That's right, no extra work for you. Instead, we'll put your money to work. Learn what the 95% aren't talking about and join the top 5% of earners today on The Wealth Flow.
Okay, welcome to The Wealth Flow. My guest today is Ryan Chaw. Ryan is a former pharmacist. He graduated as a pharmacist in 2016 and worked in infectious disease and pediatrics. The skills which he gained in the healthcare translated into real estate extremely well, especially in managing people and creating quality living spaces. Ryan began buying single-family homes, one per year, and built a reputation for high-quality student housing near a local college by renting by the room, which ended up doubling the cash flow compared to traditional rentals. By age 28, he had become a millionaire and was earning multiple six figures in student housing rental income. And Ryan, I know there's a whole lot more to your story, but I wanted to kind of start with that. And then, first of all, welcome to The Wealth Flow.
Thank you for inviting me on, Keith.
Absolutely. And I always love to start with people's backgrounds. It's always so interesting how people got into real estate and, in your instance, particularly student housing. I think there's a lot to learn in that space. And I know the audience is going to be in for a bit of a ride as we go through your story. But tell us how you got started and, where you grew up and,
Sure.
What kind of led you to being in real estate.
Yeah, so I pretty much grew up in Sacramento, California area. And my grandpa actually bought these real estate properties in the Bay Area, which was kind of the source of my inspiration. He bought them back in the 50s when they were dirt cheap. And as we all know, the prices skyrocketed there, rents went up, and he was not only able to retire early, but also able to cover part of my college tuition and that of my brothers as well. So I was like, wow, real estate is the way to go if you want to build generational wealth. So I wanted to get started as soon as possible. I wanted to save up as much money as I could to buy that first property. So I graduated as a pharmacist in 2015, like you said, started working a lot of double shifts from 7:30 a.m. to like 10 p.m. at night in the hospital. I would also work a second job at retail pharmacy, Rite Aid. And I basically continued just saving up money. And in 2016, I bought that very first property. It was a $262,000 house nearby the college I went to called UOP, University of the Pacific, in Stockton, California. And prices obviously went up over time. The houses are not that cheap now, but I rented it out by the bedroom because I saw my friend do this when he was at the college. He basically rented out to his college buddies. And not only did he live for free, but he made, good cash flow on top of that. So I was like, okay, well, it worked for him. Might as well give it a shot. And so the first one I rented out, I started off with renting out to 4 people. And each room was like $650 a month. So it was about a bit over $2,500 a month. But then I eventually started adding bedrooms to houses. And when I got a house to 6 bedrooms, it would typically rent out for $600 to $700 per room. So 6 bedrooms times $700 per bedroom is $4,200 per month in rental income. And so that was the trick that I used to scale so quickly. There was a lot more cash flow by renting out by the bedroom that allowed me to continue to purchase more properties. Now, also, I was in California, right? So I bought my first 5 properties in California, and those properties appreciated a lot. And so I was able to take out some equity from those properties using a HELOC, home equity line of credit, to continue to expand. And I started, buying out of the state, but I've always done student housing because it's one of the best ways to double the amount of rental income that you can get. And it's also super consistent because there's students every single year, brand fresh new group of students every year. And universities have been around, like my university started out in 1849. So they've been there for a very, very, very long time.
Yeah, no, that's great insight. So you did the first one on your first you obviously there's a lot there to unpack, right? You learned a lot from just watching your grandparents and kind of what they had done, and you saw, and I'm sure if they were buying in the Bay Area, they too saw some crazy appreciation.
Yeah, it was crazy. Yep, I think it might have been around 200 something thousand back then. But then when they sold it, it was a set of 6 flats in North Beach, San Francisco. And they sold it for about, I think, 3.6 million or something like this.
Oh, wow. Okay. A little bit of a gain there for sure.
Yeah, a little bit of a gain. Right.
Yeah. And so, how did you, so you were working which allowed you to be able to buy that first home.
Yeah, I started from zero. I had no money when I was starting. I was just trying to get into real estate as soon as possible. I actually just worked my butt off, and I saved up to like $100,000 before I bought that first property. I just wanted to make sure I had a lot of, buffer room and everything.
Yeah. Well, that was, what a great, what a great technique to be able to just really get the most out of that property by renting it by the bedroom. And there's actually co-living. I'm hearing a lot of people doing that as well now, where it's not necessarily student housing, but they're doing this kind of the same concept. I think it works really well with the students. I know that just having 2 daughters that have gone through college, one that is still in college and is doing exactly what you're talking about. We had to sign a lease, and it was specific for the bedroom that she was living in. And so that person is also maximizing. But exactly. I mean, they found this place probably a semester and a half ago, at least a semester ago, right? So maybe December timeframe. And so we put deposits on it and everything way back then. So this landlord knew,
that's true.
That they were able to lock things up well in advance. So I think it's
sometimes we get booked a year in advance, frequently actually.
Yeah, that's awesome. What are so some people, maybe some in the audience even would may hear this regarding student housing and think college students, parties, damage to the property. What has been your true experience on that? I mean, do you feel like it's that's been an issue in the past, and are there techniques and ways that you can kind of vet that out where you're not having as much of an issue with that?
Yeah, definitely. I have something called the prime method for evaluating what type of tenant they are, but it all starts with investing at the right university. I do target top universities. So community colleges, not so much, because a lot of those students have local housing anyways, but I'll target like really top universities, not necessarily Ivy League or Johns Hopkins all the time, but I do look for universities with a lot of serious degrees. And these degrees are ones that you have to really spend a lot of time and effort to get that degree. So think about like a dental degree, right? Pharmacy, medical doctor, nursing, law degrees, engineering degrees. These are the type of universities that I really target. And just by virtue of being around that crowd, you're naturally going to get higher quality tenants. These are, usually straight A, well-rounded students. Maybe they did very well in the SAT. I don't know if they still do SAT, but that's kind of the type of tenant that we're looking for, and especially grad students. I really specialize in having having a lot of grad students and like medical interns, medical residents. So sometimes I'm there local hospitals as well. So, I do student and professional housing. But with that being said, I have a method for kind of screening the tenants. It's called the Prime method. So P stands for placement of your ads. You want to place your ads right in front of your target tenant. So it could be like the school's off-campus housing website, for example. They might have a specific affiliate site that they use. There's Facebook housing groups for college housing. And so you'll just type in UC Berkeley off-campus housing, and you'll find a Facebook housing group dedicated to that. And so you want to get right in front of their faces, right? So you have to place your ads correctly. R stands for reviewing social media or reviewing their background kind of. So I like looking through, let's say, their Facebook profile. If they contacted me through Facebook, I will go to, look their name up on LinkedIn, try to see what type of tenant they are. Are they posting a bunch of pictures of partying, doing drugs, smoking, alcohol, etc.? Or are they serious and they're like in a medical program or something like that, trying to get their doctoral degree? And so I stands for identifying the type of tenant, kind of going back to, seeing what type of tenant, what degree they're doing, but also thinking about is this person like a really needy person? Are they asking for a lot of stuff before they even move in? Do I have a weird vibe from them that they might be trouble later on? And think about those types of things. M stands for measuring responsiveness. So the more responsive they are, the more responsible they typically are. So if they're getting back their paperwork quickly, they're, picking up the calls and, discussing with me, hi, Dr. Chaw, I'm very interested. Here's the paperwork and everything. Then yeah, they're probably going to be a more responsible tenant. And then E stands for ensuring proof of income. So you always want to get proof of income, usually from the parents, if the parents are paying for the rent, or it could be like a scholarship. It could be a stipend, like a research stipend. There's a lot of international students who come here to do research and, they have a nice stipend there. And then there's also obviously like bank statements that you could take a look at, pay stubs, or if they have, I'm trying to think, student loans, of course, right? So some people take student loans out for room and board. So you always want to make sure they're able to make usually like 3 times the monthly rent as income in order to make sure that they're qualified.
And I'm sorry, Ryan, what was I again?
I stands for identifying the type of tenant. Is this somebody who's, very studious, professional, they're in their communication? Are they, partying a lot or doing drugs, that type of stuff too? So you just trying to think through that.
For sure. Yeah, I do a lot of the same stuff. I do use the measure of 3 times the rental amount. In years and years of just doing regular landlording, I guess you could say, I have found that when I've made exceptions or when somebody has had a circumstance where I cannot quite verify the income, that's where I've run into trouble.
Exactly.
I have to always go back on, hey, look, I know I need a tenant, but I have to have something that's verifiable when it comes to that.
Yeah,
and I love the
standard procedure, right? It's so when you were talking about how I have a hospital background or pharmacy background, in the hospital we have things called SOPs, right? Standard operating procedures. And if you go off protocol, that's when you get in trouble. Like if you're following protocol, fine. But if your manager talks to you and you told them, I went off protocol, they're gonna go like, what? Why?
Right.
You have to have a good reason, right? So it's the same thing for real estate. Like if they have only 2 times the monthly rent coming in as income, if you better have a really good reason to accept them as a tenant if you're gonna, go off protocol.
For sure. And it's funny because a lot of times when you're going off protocol on one item, then you're sort of like trying to make an exception for another one if you're really just trying to fit them in as a tenant. And oftentimes a tenant that's not going to be a good is typically not going to check more than one box. But I also like the Facebook thing. That's so funny to see as well. I don't know if you've seen this, but I've seen, of course, the party. It's amazing how many people will post on Instagram or on Facebook them smoking marijuana or just wild parties or whatever it may be. The other thing that I've found that's kind of funny is they'll put like a mixed breed as a pet. And then they've got on Facebook clearly a pit bull. Like, it's like they've got pictures of their dog, on there. You just have to look. So that's funny as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, no, I think that's great. That's a great procedure to do. So I want to maybe talk a little bit more though about how you scaled, how quickly you scaled, what that looked like. Obviously, when you're making more income than you are, having to pay rents, and that's creating cash flow for you. And by doing this by the room, it's actually creating significant cash flow, dependable cash flow. So it makes it a lot easier to be able to reliably scale, where that you're going to cover your bases when it comes to the rents. So you bought the first one, that was sort of your sample. How quickly did you buy a second property, and did you buy it in the same general area?
Yeah, I bought it the second year, but I made a lot of mistakes on the first one, which lost me a good chunk of change. So the second one, I actually bought as a second home, because if you live in it, 14 days, that's what the lender was explaining to me. If you live in it 14 days of the year, and then you go ahead and rent it out. That's one way you can do it. And you only needed back then at least, I only needed a 10% down for that. So that's what I did. I bought the second property for 10% down because I couldn't put a full 20% down. So sometimes, you get a little bit creative with the process. But what's cool is by the third or fourth year, that's when it started, like my houses went up in value. So I think it went up 25 to 30K a year or something like this. So after 2 years, that's about 60K, which I was able to take out using the HELOC, home equity line of credit, and use that to buy my third property. And then basically the second property's equity was used to buy my fourth property. So that's how I was able to purchase one property per year. It wasn't like I was dumping I was dumping a lot of W-2 income into the houses, right? But like, I didn't need to rely on it, just the W-2 income. I could use the equity on the property to continue to expand my portfolio, as well as the cash flow, of course. So basically, my rate was one property a year. That was my goal. Very simple, easy goal. I shouldn't say easy. I just did whatever I could to get it, even if I had to do, a 10% type deal. But yeah, it was very doable. Especially in California when the prices appreciate and you build equity very quickly. And then I just eventually started buying out of state because there's a lot of cash flow. And there's cash flow in California, but there's a lot more out of state. So I bought like 8 properties out of state. There's 2 years where I bought 4 properties per year. So now I'm at 14 properties, but, I just started off with buying just one a year and just self-managing it and then building the systems in place. And now I have like a team that manages it for me as well.
No, that's great. And with that second one, you mentioned doing a second home loan, and I've done that as well. I ended up still putting down, just because I was trying to get my payment lower, I ended up still putting down more than 10%, but I only had to put 10% on a vacation rental. We do a short-term rental on that one. But that was, that's a huge difference. If you're able to all of a sudden, if you consider normally if you're going to buy a second investment property, you're going to put somewhere, if it's a single family, you can usually get away with 20% down. Sometimes it's going to be 25% down, especially if it's like a duplex or fourplex. A lot of banks are going to want 25, but the difference between that, when you're looking at 10%, essentially you can buy properties twice as fast if you're putting down that little amount. Did it have to be a certain distance, though, from your initial investment?
It depends on the lender. I've done it a few times throughout my life. They had different requirements for sure.
Okay.
Every lender has their own kind of requirements with the second home thing. But another method that people use is, of course, house hacking as well. So the house I'm currently staying in Sacramento, I actually do have housemates. I have, I think, 2 people from Sacramento State, like grad students, and then one person is an engineer.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
No, that's great. That's great. And so on most of the ones that you've purchased, did you do any type of rehab to them, or was it basically almost turnkey where you didn't have to do too much other than just rent the rooms out?
Yeah, it's mostly turnkey. I really
Okay.
try to choose houses that are generally already in very good condition, but I also want to have a good amount of square footage. So usually my goal is to have it 1,500 square foot or more. That way I can get it to 5 or 6 bedrooms, just depending on the layout. And so the rule is the total square footage by 300, and that's usually how many bedrooms you can get. So 1,500 divided by 300 is 5. So that means you can have like about 5 bedrooms, maybe 6, depending on the layout. So really adding those extra bedrooms adds in a lot more rental income because each room is an extra $600 or $700 a month. Depending on where you are, it's like $800 in Sacramento, and then the Bay Area is more like $1,200. Bay Area and LA are like $1,200 a room. So
Okay. How are you adding the extra rooms? Are you taking living areas and turning those into bedrooms, or how are you getting the extra? Like typically on like say a 1,500 square foot house, a lot of them are going to be probably like a 3-2, maybe a 3-1,
mhm.
and possibly even a 2 bedroom. So you have the dedicated bedrooms, the normal ones that would have come with a house. So how are you now, at creating some additional
Yeah,
bedrooms?
definitely. It's a lot easier than people would think, I would say, because you're just repurposing the existing space. So a lot of times you will have like a house that has like a family room, a dining room, a living room. So you just turn the family room and the living room or dining room into bedrooms, and then you keep the whatever remaining room as the common space, right? And sometimes you can even, if the family room is large enough, you can split that in half, and that will become 2 bedrooms.
Right.
So that's one way to do it is dividing rooms in half or just repurposing the room. And a lot of times, all you have to do is some framing, drywall, and put a door in, and that costs anywhere from 1,500 to 2,500 for like a standard room. Now, if you're moving around things like the electricals, like a fan, a ceiling fan, or maybe you're moving around some vents and ductwork, it could be a little bit more, but it's usually not too expensive to do.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's a great point. And certainly, and really I don't know if you don't really even need inside insulation. You may or may not just for noise purposes, but
Yeah,
yeah,
I
it
usually
seems
do
like
extra insulation when I
do
can.
you?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, makes sense. Makes sense. No, that's a great plan. And so you obviously saw the appreciation in the California markets. How many did you say you bought there before going out of state?
5 before I bought my first out of the state one. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. And you did HELOC on sounds like one of the first and then possibly the second as well.
Yeah,
How
I had
did
3
you end up
HELOCs.
paying back the 3 HELOCs? Okay. Did you end up paying the HELOCs back, or
Yeah,
how
so I
did?
pay them back, and then whenever I wanna buy one, it comes out again.
Okay,
That's kinda
okay, yeah.
how it works. Yeah, it's
I
a
do that
revolving
with
line of credit, so it's very flexible in that sense.
Exactly. I do the same thing. We with mobile home parks. I'm using a lot of times home equity lines of credit, and then when I do the refinanced, once I've
Yeah.
done the turnaround, I can pay
And a
it
lot
off
of
and
people don't know, but for
basically.
HELOCs, you can actually lock the rate if you want to. You have to pay a little bit higher though. So I actually,
Yeah.
when the rates were going up, I kind of saw it coming. And so I locked in like 2 HELOCs for 5.5%. So the HELOC rate that I have right now is lower than the current mortgage rate.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. So you've done that a couple times now. You went out of state. What state did you decide to go to, and did you stay all in one state?
Yeah. I went to Ohio, Cleveland, Ohio.
Hmm.
Because I was nearby one of the top clinics and hospitals in the area. So I like to target cities that have both a really well-known, like a well-known hospital or a pretty large hospital, as well as a top university, ideally. That way I have a mix of the healthcare workers along with the students. I would say about 50% of my population or my tenants in Ohio are actually medical workers in some form. So, like
Okay.
medical
Okay.
residents, medical fellows doing their fellowships, and they usually stay for like 2 or 3 years. And then you have your nurses, potentially even travel nurses. You have your med techs, and you have PT, pharmacy, etc.
Yeah, for sure. And so on these additional ones now that you're buying, what type of a loan are you using with those?
Oh, yeah. So I do. Eventually, I ran out of Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac conventional loans. So you can only
Okay.
have up to 10. So I ran out basically. And then I had to do DSCR loans. So
Okay. Yeah.
what's nice about DSCR is they kind of take whatever is on the appraisal report and say, and estimate what the rent would be. And then if that covers the mortgage payment, then you're pretty much set. All you have to do is have the down payment, the 20 to 25% down, depending on what the ratio is, right? It could be
Mhm.
more. But yeah, usually 25% down is what I did for the DSCR loans. They're a little bit higher than conventional loans, but if you run out of conventional loans, you don't have much choice, right?
Yeah, for sure. And for the audience, DSCR is debt service coverage ratio. And so, as long as, like Ryan's saying, as long as it covers the mortgage by a certain percentage, then they'll lend on it. Are they taking into consideration the plan that you have as far as
No.
doing renting it by the better? No.
No,
Okay.
because when I'm buying it, they're like, well, you could say whatever you want, right? You
Yeah,
could
no,
say
no,
you're
for
putting
sure.
on Airbnb and you're going to get 10x rent, but they just take whatever the market rent is, yeah,
Okay, okay.
to
That's fair.
qualify you.
I mean, for a while, some of them were doing, really taking into consideration, for short-term rentals and the ability to be able to do that. And so that, maxed it out a little bit better than just traditional rents. But,
Right.
every lender and every type of loan is going to be
It's a little
slightly
different.
different.
Yep, yep.
Yeah. All right. So now you've moved up to where you're having to put a little bit more money down, but you've got this huge basis of, properties that you've built up. So that's fantastic. So you were able to do how many loans with Fannie and Freddie type products before you maxed out?
10.
10 or,
They
yeah.
cut, yeah, 10. I saved
Yep.
one just in case I, get in the crunch or I want a vacation home or something.
There you go. There you go.
Yeah.
Okay. Sounds good.
But
Well, that's
you
neat.
can alternate though too. So if you have like a spouse, right, you can put one under your name, one under their name, and do it that way too. A lot of people do
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. It's a great strategy. Single family is truly a great pathway to becoming a millionaire, becoming a
Oh yeah.
multimillionaire, and really getting that cash flow. And I love the idea of what you're doing with renting by the rooms. I think it's a really smart idea. And you get the appreciation that you a lot of times don't necessarily. Now, is your strategy still appreciation, or are you more on the cash flow play at this point with the Ohio properties, for instance?
Ohio is more of a cash flow play, but I do buy in neighborhoods that have significant appreciation too. I think the appreciation rate was between 5 to 7% in the neighborhoods I buy. So
Yeah.
I actually do a lot of research into like what neighborhoods are the best neighborhoods to purchase in, not just for student housing, but in general, like appreciation and all of that and good condition houses. So a lot of times you can, find that information. There's like a lot of information on Reddit, for example. Students will
Hmm.
say like, you can just type in like best places to live in Cleveland, Ohio, and students will tell you, or even just general people will tell you, oh yeah, avoid this neighborhood, stay in this one. And if you find certain neighborhoods come up very often, like Little Italy or Midtown comes up very often, then that's probably where you're going to want to purchase your property because people already know in their heads, the students already know in their heads, oh yeah, I know Midtown. That's where, a lot of the great houses are. That's a good place to live. That's where all the grad students go. And so, you really want to get into the heads of your target tenant. So by doing that initial research on Reddit, student forums, or whatever, it will, go a long way in making sure that you can rent out your place pretty much right away.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit more about like how are you doing? For instance, your leases. Is there anything specific other than that it's just tied to the bedroom? In the common areas. Are there any tricks of the trade that you're utilizing to assure that you don't have,
Crazy party
roommates?
tenants and
Yeah,
stuff like
roommates
this.
arguing
Yeah, yeah,
over,
yeah, yeah.
I've heard
Little
of
crazy
everything
parties.
from refrigerators and, people taking stuff out of, somebody else's, food or whatever, and it causes
Yeah.
bickering between the roommates and
Oh
stuff.
yeah, definitely. So basically what I did is I created a series of SOPs, it's very simple. I know it sounds like it has to be complicated, but it's very simple. It's like if then statements. If the tenant does this, then do this, If there's late rent, then send out this email, late rent email, right? And so that's what I did is I created a series of SOPs, and then I trained my virtual assistant to handle those SOPs. So I use a virtual assistant based in the Philippines. $7 to $10 an hour is the typical going rate, and then they basically handle all of that type of stuff. And they will call up the tenant. They will do the move-ins with them and basically go through all the house rules. So I have a home guide, and they'll basically go through all the house rules and guide to know, okay, what's the Wi-Fi? What do I do if I get locked out? What should I do about the dishes if, somebody leaves dishes in the sink? What are the trash days? All that type of stuff. So having somebody go through the rules with them and an initial off on it is, one of the best ways you can kind of keep the tenants responsible. But with that being said, even if you have one or two really responsible tenants, they can kind of help with some of the house chores, for instance. And what I do is I have like a head tenant, and I will give them a discount in rent. And like whenever there's a tour or something like that, the head tenant kind of takes care of it, because they get a good discount in rent too. So maybe I'll give them like $50 off per month or something like this. And then they'll do all the tours. They will help resolve conflicts, housemate conflicts. They will help, let's say the trash needs to be taken out, that type of stuff. So it kind of works out very well.
Okay. And then tell me a little bit, I guess, about the structure of what you provide as a landlord. You mentioned internet. I would imagine you'd want, one internet for the house. Obviously, you're going to have probably these on a single meter. They're not going to be individually metered by bedroom.
Right.
So you're providing utilities in this particular case. What are some of the other things that you're covering?
Yeah, I actually don't cover utilities, except the only thing I cover is landscaping technically and any wear and tear type stuff, right? So internet, water, gas, sewage, what else? Electricity. Basically, all of the tenants are the ones covering that, but it's split equally among all the tenants. So each of them pays 1/6 of the bill. It could be anywhere usually from like $40 a month to maybe $120 a month. But yeah, the tenants do cover the utilities. So it's basically $600 to $700 per month plus utilities. Utilities not included is, what you say in the ad.
Sure. And so are you putting the utilities in your company name and the internet in your company name?
Usually,
and then
yeah. So usually it's
Okay.
under my name or company name. And then what I have is a bookkeeper who downloads all the bills, basically calculates everything out on a sheet, sends it to the tenants, and then makes sure that they pay by the 5th of the month because we have a 5-day grace period. But yeah, they send out all those emails and everything, so I don't have to do that anymore. But when I started, I was the one downloading the bills, putting it on an Excel spreadsheet, dividing it by 6, and sending it out by email. So it took about an hour, maybe a month, just to do that, and then another hour to check to make sure the rents and utilities were all paid. So maybe 1 to 2 hours at most, right? So maybe 2 hours or 2 hours to check and then 2 hours to send the emails. But yeah, that's what I was doing at the very beginning, was self-managing it.
Okay. And then what about from the standpoint of insurance? Is there anything specific that you have to do differently than you would otherwise? Obviously, when you have an owner-occupied property, you get a certain insurance rate. Typically, it's going to be a little bit higher if it's used as a rental property. You're not occupying it yourself. I know, for instance, on a short-term rental, it's going to also we have some additional coverage that's specific for short-term rental use. But in this case, is there anything specific that you have to do with respect to insurance?
Insurance is going up like crazy. I'm sure that's what a lot of people are experiencing right now. No, actually, in terms of like between a student housing versus like renting out to a family, I haven't had any differences in terms of pricing. And like I tell them that it's student housing, they're like, yeah, it doesn't really change your policy at all. So it really depends on the insurance company, maybe. But I haven't experienced that. I use State Farm, and I think I have Allstate. There's some different ones out there because I had to. I only really experienced the difference when I had to have somebody cover knob and tube electricals, because there are a lot of insurance companies that don't want to cover knob and tube electricals.
Correct.
So, yeah. But so I had to do some searching for that. But other than that, no, there wasn't any differences in doing student housing.
Okay. That's great. Very interesting. And then, so at what point, you've got 14 properties right now, but if you start looking at, okay, that's by the room, you've got a whole lot more tenants, right? So you got probably what?
90.
How many tenants?
I have 90 tenants right now. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So you got in a small apartment complex here. And so with that, obviously there's challenges from the, property management side. So have you, you're not self-managing necessarily, or at least you've got some help. You've got somebody that's dedicated to help you do that piece of the puzzle.
I got a really good team at this point. Once you get like to the fourth or fifth house or so, that's kind of like when I started hiring out, just because like the bookkeeping became a good amount of work. And so the first person I hired was a bookkeeper. And then the second person I hired was somebody to do the marketing for me. And I just trained them on the SOPs, the if-then statements, essentially. And so I have a full-time VA now who does all the marketing and customer service. I have a 20-hour-a-week VA. And then I have, again, they're all like in the Philippines, and really good count there, by the way. I hired in California, and the people in the Philippines were way better for customer service and for marketing purposes. But anyways, it obviously depends on the person too. But yeah, I've had a really good experience hiring VAs. And then I built up a local team as well. So having a Rolodex of like contractors is really important. So for each profession too, you want to have one for plumbing, you want to have one for electricals, an electrician, right? Roofer, somebody maybe for foundation, and somebody who's good with sewage lines, So you basically want to build this Rolodex of contractors that you can count on. Another one is HVAC, right? I had a furnace that died in the middle of winter, and it was like 0 degrees outside, and it was crazy. But I was able to have the HVAC guy go in, and they just replaced it with a brand new furnace and was able to take care of the tenants. So it's really important you have those people basically on call in case something like an emergency happens to you, like a furnace dying in the middle of winter, right? I have both of that. I have the marketing that's kind of in-house, in-house, but outsourced to the Philippines. But basically, they have their own marketing processes. And then I have the local handyman contractors and somebody who helps with like the tours and the move-ins. But I do not pay the 8 to 12%. So a lot of people, they pay property management 8 to 12%. I don't do that. They'll, the local property manager, I'll pay like $35 to do the move-in, $35 to do the tour. So it's a per cases basis, and they don't do any of the marketing, right? So the VAs are doing the marketing part.
Okay. And then do you have them handling any portion of the lease, or do you have standard documents that you're using with respect to that?
Yeah. So I have standard lease documents on DocuSign. The virtual assistant will, once they get the proof of income and everything, and they're qualified, then they'll send out the lease agreements electronically for signature and then collect the deposits. Yep.
And are they doing running some of the background? And do you use a certain system for the approvals to do the background, or do you have your team or your virtual assistant kind of, like a lot of times I'll have, for instance, I'm just thinking of my own cases. We use an electronic link where they're supposed to upload their, driver's license, their proof of income, their paycheck stubs, all that good stuff.
Yeah.
But, a lot of times it'll come in, they'll hit submit, and they'll either be missing pieces of that, or they'll have it for one of the tenants, but not the others. So there's like a little bit of, legwork that you have to do to get all of the pieces of the puzzle together.
Yeah, so I have a Google form that they fill out because students, they use their phones a lot, and Google form is super simple to fill out on a phone.
Yeah.
So I have the VA send out that form, which has all those questions. Have you been evicted before? Do you have pets? Do you smoke? Et cetera, right? And so they get that form in, and they can, once they have that form, they have the contact info and everything, so they can follow up with that tenant. And they know they're trained, how to kind of spot tenants that might be an issue down the road.
Hmm.
If they're, really needy, they, get upset very easily, that type of stuff. And they know to look out for those things. And if they're not sure, they will ask me as well. They might screenshot a conversation on our Ring Central, which is the phone app that we use, and then they'll send it to me and say, "What do you think about this person?" Right? But that's only if they're really on, not like on the fence about that person, right?
Right.
But yeah,
Right.
they know how to do the whole process. They know how to ask for proof of income. They know how to confirm that it's 3 times the monthly rent and all that. It's not like
Perfect.
rocket science or anything, especially if you have the SOPs in place, right? And the reason why the hospital I worked at ran so well, I used to work at Kaiser Permanente, is they just have so many SOPs for every single thing, every single process. There's no room for questioning, like this is
Yeah.
exactly how to do. Now, there's obviously some flexibility with the process, but, it makes it, if you have clear instructions, the chances of somebody doing it correctly goes up significantly.
Oh, for sure, for sure. And then, what about? Are you using any particular software for them to be able to make their payments on, for your VAs to be able to load in those utility payments?
Yeah.
And if so, what
Right.
system
So
do you
I
use?
accept a lot, honestly. Most people do it through Zelle. But I also do Venmo. For international students, they might have international currency, like Indian rupees, for example. Then I will use an app called Wise, Wise, and that
I've
can do
used
the
it.
currency conversions. Plus there's a small fee. I think it's like $2, 250 or something like that. But yeah, that's how I accept the rent, because I do have international students frequently. So, and people coming internationally to do research at that university. So, yeah, I do accept those ways for payment. Eventually, I'm going to migrate over to something called Buildium for a majority of payments.
Yeah.
Most likely, Buildium is a really good software for collecting rent, charging late fees, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I know a lot of people that use it and they seem to be really happy with it. We're using Rent Manager on our end. It just allows for the portals and everything to be built in,
Yeah.
and they can do maintenance requests, that kind of stuff,
Yeah.
over that.
Yeah, there's a
How are
lot of
y'all
good
doing
software out
maintenance?
there for sure for all this. Right now, we're technically using QuickBooks. Like
Okay.
my bookkeeper, he has rules built into QuickBooks, and it identifies rent, and it labels utility payments and everything on its own. Yeah.
Okay. Perfect. Wow. So, well, it's a great process, and clearly it's been working out very well for you. You've really built an empire here. Where do we go from here, Ryan? When I say that, are you continuing to look in Ohio for additional properties, or are there some other parts of the U.S. that you're looking at? And where do you really see your business going over the next 3 to 5 years?
Yeah, I'm definitely continuing to expand in Ohio. My ultimate goal is to get to 100 properties for student housing. So maybe 10 properties in 10 states. I don't know. We'll see how that goes. But
Yeah.
I, love doing this. I love providing that service for students. And I also teach others how to do it as well. So I do one-on-one coaching because I feel like people get the most value out of one-on-one coaching versus, hiring like a teacher's assistant and all of that. I like working one-on-one with people, and I show them the whole process, essentially, like how to identify the deal, make sure that there's market demand for rent, rents in that area, that there's a lot of student demand, and then basically renovating, getting in those extra bedrooms, and all the way to signing a lease. But, if you're interested in just like connecting with me, I do have a free PDF, which kind of goes through all the mistakes that I made when getting into student housing. And that's at www.newbierealestateinvesting.com/guide. That's again, www.newbierealestateinvesting.com/guide. And newbie is spelled NEWBIE. Again, free PDF that goes through kind kind of like the basics of the method, as well as the mistakes that I made and learned from.
All right. Well, Ryan, this is amazing that you've been able to do this, and it looks like you're continuing to build your empire. But I'd like you to be able to share with the audience, you're helping other people to be able to do the same thing themselves, and doing that through coaching. So can you speak to that a little bit and tell everybody how they can, number one, find out more about you, how they can connect with you on that, and then also the services that you're offering?
Yeah, definitely. So the student housing system was really powerful for me, and it allowed me to reach financial freedom. I actually quit my pharmacy job at the age of 31 about 2 years ago. And since it was so powerful, I wanted to, of course, share it with others and help others achieve that financial freedom. So I do provide one-on-one coaching with people, and I really like working one-on-one because I feel like you get the most value out of it, versus like working with like a teacher's assistant or something like that. So I do a coaching program where I walk people through A through Z, essentially through the whole process and identifying a good student housing property nearby a top college, figuring out what's the market demand in that area for like what can you charge and rent? How can we renovate this property to add those extra bedrooms? And then all the way to actually moving in tenants, marketing, and managing them. So it's a really good program for those interested, but I do also offer like a free PDF where you can connect with me. And this is the best way to connect with me at www.newbierealestateinvesting.com/guide. That's www.newbierealestateinvesting.com/guide. Newbie is spelled NEWBIE. And that free PDF goes through all the mistakes that I made getting started in student housing and the actual method and how to use it. And you'll get a lot of updates from me as well about things that I learned, lessons learned from just investing in this specific niche.
That's fantastic. Well, hopefully everybody in the audience will take advantage of that and go to your website, get that free PDF, and then connect with you, and be able to be well on their way to being a millionaire and building a empire just like you've built. So that's a great service. And so, Ryan, how else can people find out about you if there's another spot you want to point us to? And then I have a couple questions for you that I ask every guest.
Yeah, I mean, you could probably just Google my name, Ryan Chaw, and my YouTube channel will come up probably. I think it's like at Ryan Chaw 1 or something like this. I have an Instagram. I think it's also Ryan Chaw 1.
Okay.
But
Okay.
I do post a lot. I do videos a lot on YouTube. So I release one a week. So you can go there definitely to check me out. My last name is spelled Chaw, CHAW.
Perfect. Okay. Well, this has been great. It's one, that's one of the wonderful things I like about this podcast. It's not only, it's interesting for the audience, but it's interesting for me as well. There's so many ways that you can truly grow your wealth and, become a millionaire, get that passive income. And like in your case, find that financial freedom of being able to leave your job at such a young age. So, you're an inspiration to a lot of people, and really have enjoyed having you on. I've got a couple more questions for you. One just being, any advice you might give somebody who's just starting out in their investment journey.
Yeah, definitely. So the first one is going to be the toughest to get, and you kind of just have to get over that barrier. That's probably the toughest thing. Just get that first one. Try to make sure it cash flows, and I highly recommend using this method. If not using student housing specifically, at least do co-living where you're renting out the rooms, just because nowadays with the high interest rates and high home prices, in order to build a sustainable business, my opinion, very strong opinion, is that you do have to do one of the more creative methods, which I think this one's great because it provides affordable housing. It provides a higher supply of housing in cities as well. So it's the best of both worlds, not just for the tenant, but you, and I think the city in general too, because it allows for more housing to be provided. And yeah, I would just start there. Try to invest near a top university if possible, or if not that, maybe near a top hospital in the area.
I think that's great advice. And then, Ryan, also just a book recommendation. It doesn't have to be real estate related. It certainly can be. Just something you've read that's been impactful that you'd like to share with the audience.
Recently, I finished this book called The Road Less Stupid.
Yeah.
It's a really good book. I think it's Keith Cunningham or something. But he basically talks about all of the he talks about something called thinking time, which is really important, in my opinion. Setting aside some time to think about, obviously just not just what are your goals, but how am I going to achieve those goals? And just like doing that deep dive for 45 minutes to an hour, and just doing it a couple, 1 or 2 or 3 times a week, has definitely changed my business journey for sure. It's a really good book to check out.
Yeah, for sure. I've actually heard him speak at an event that we had. So I need to probably refresh or reread or re-listen to that one as well. I believe I have the hard copy book, and I think I listened to the Audible just because I like to listen to those as I'm running or whatever. But yeah, really good book. So thank you, Ryan. Well, this has been fantastic. Thanks so much for being on the Wealth Flow, and I think we'll call it a show.
Being that you're still here, I trust you found value in this episode. I personally wish I would have known these guests and strategies when I started my wealth creation journey. Go to wealthflow.capital to subscribe to our newsletter. And as a free gift, we will send you our quarterly market report and the top 10 things to look for in an investment opportunity. Take a minute to give our show a rating and review. Help us reach 1 million professionals by subscribing and sharing this episode with someone you know who could also find value in it.